Hey everyone, let's just jump right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking a genuinely fascinating ancient text to explore the moral basis of justice. We're going to be looking specifically at Exodus chapter 23. And honestly, even if you spent years studying these historical frameworks, you are going to be amazed by how incredibly modern and complex this particular ethical code actually is. It has so much to say about how we view community and fairness right now.
We're basically dissecting a historical blueprint today. This isn't just some dusty list of old rules. It's a profoundly deep philosophical statement on human nature. It literally laid the foundation for ethical and legal codes that have echoed across centuries, defining what actually holds a functional society together.
Here is our roadmap for today. First, truth and the mob. Second, the scales of impartiality. Third, empathy for the enemy. Fourth, justice through rest. And finally, number 5, the divine covenant. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Truth and the mob, and the very real courage it takes to resist the crowd.
What's truly wild about this ancient command, "You shall not fall in with the many to do evil," is just how relevant it feels today. I mean, long before social media algorithms or viral misinformation, this text is calling out something we battle constantly: mob mentality. It recognizes that one of the absolute biggest threats to objective truth is the sheer, suffocating pressure of the majority. The moral basis of justice starts with having the guts to stand completely alone when the crowd is getting it wrong. The text gets very specific here, explicitly forbidding anyone from being a malicious witness. Basically, you cannot join hands with a wicked person to spread a false report, and you absolutely cannot side with the many to pervert justice in a lawsuit. It's telling us that true justice requires us to resist echoing false narratives, especially when it's convenient or when everyone else is already doing it.
Which brings us right to Section 2. The scales of impartiality. Let's talk about blind justice.
There is a brilliant juxtaposition presented here. On one hand, the text says, "Nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his lawsuit." But then, literally just a few lines later, it pivots and commands, "You shall not pervert the justice due to your poor in his lawsuit." This is so profound. It's arguing that justice must be flawlessly blind to social status. You definitely don't rig the system against the poor, right? But you also don't automatically hand them a victory just because they're disadvantaged. Justice relies on objective facts, while still keeping a fiercely protective eye on the most vulnerable.
So how do you maintain that strict impartiality? Well, the text outlaws some very specific corruptions. You can't spread false charges. Obviously, you can't kill the innocent and righteous. And taking a bribe is strictly off-limits. I absolutely love the vivid imagery the source text uses for this. It says, "A bribe blinds the clear-sighted." It's like it physically impairs your moral vision and entirely subverts the cause of the person who's actually in the right.
Section 3. Empathy for the enemy. This is where we see a massive shift into radical compassion.
Okay, so if the previous rules felt like a cold courtroom procedure, this is the ultimate plot twist. The text mandates a highly specific and honestly super awkward practical command. Step 1, you are walking down the road and see your enemy's donkey struggling under a heavy burden. Now, human nature screams, "Not my problem, that guy is the worst." But step 2 says, no, you have to overcome your hatred. You must intentionally refrain from just walking away. And step 3, you have to get in the dirt and rescue that animal with him. This isn't just an animal welfare law. It's literally forcing two enemies to work shoulder to shoulder to fix a shared problem. It's proactive empathy in action.
And that radical empathy extends straight to the immigrant or the outsider. The command is clear: you shall not oppress a sojourner. But it doesn't just drop a rule and walk away. It grounds it in a deeply emotional shared trauma. You know the heart of a sojourner, for you were sojourners in the land of Egypt. Think about a time you felt entirely out of place, like a total outsider. The text leverages that exact universal human emotion to build systemic compassion. You treat the outsider justly because you know exactly how much it stings when you aren't.
Let's zoom out for Section 4. Justice through rest. Here is where we see justice baked directly into the calendar. Breaking down the Sabbath laws reveals an ingenious dual structure. In the 7th year, the land is mandated to lie fallow. Why? So the poor can eat whatever grows naturally, and the wild beasts get the leftovers. Then there's the 7th day, a complete cessation of work. But look closely at who the explicit beneficiaries are: the ox, the donkey, the servant's son, and the alien. This goes way beyond religious ritual.
We're looking at a deeply systemic social safety net and an economic reset button.
The crucial takeaway is this. True rest, under this ancient framework, actually means refreshment for the marginalized. By forcing a hard stop on the economy every 7 days and on agriculture every 7 years, the system ensures that the most vulnerable, down to the working animals, cannot be relentlessly exploited for profit. Justice is quite literally scheduled into their existence.
Finally, Section 5, the Divine Covenant. Let's look at the authority and the promise behind all of this.
To properly contextualize this, we have to remember this framework wasn't just, a list of friendly suggestions. For the ancient Israelites, this was a direct mandate from a divine authority. It was completely intertwined with their required agricultural feasts, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering. These mandatory celebrations explicitly tied their economic survival directly to their religious devotion.
And that devotion came with very strict conditions and some huge promises. The text says an angel will guard their way. It demands absolute loyalty, strictly prohibiting serving other gods. It promises the overthrow of opposing nations, like the Amorites and the Hittites. In return for sticking to this justice system, they're promised health, provision, and a long life. It even specifies that conquering the land will happen little by little, specifically so the land doesn't become desolate and get overrun by wild beasts. Their entire survival and prosperity hung on their obedience to these moral laws.
So bringing all these pieces together, we arrive at a stunning resolution to what initially feels like a paradox. The text masterfully weaves two opposing forces together. On one side, you've got rigid impartiality, an unyielding commitment to objective truth, resisting the mob, and never bending the law for anyone. But on the other side, it balances that perfectly with intense subjective compassion, commanding you to help your enemy, and scheduling mandatory rest for the marginalized. Which leaves us with this final, genuinely provocative question. Can true justice actually exist without both strict impartiality and radical empathy? If you only have strict rules, society becomes entirely cold and unfeeling. But if you only have empathy, you completely lose objective truth and fairness. This ancient blueprint makes a compelling argument that you absolutely need both to form a real moral basis of justice. It's a challenge from thousands of years ago that we're still wrestling with today. Thanks so much for joining me to unpack this. Keep asking the hard questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.